Good evening, hashtag sports and Bills Mafia. As hashtag sports will try to present to you. Oh, God, this is going to be a tough one tonight. Micah Hyde was effectively placed on the injured reserve, ending his 2022 season. And now we just found out word that Jordan Poyer will not be suiting up tomorrow. Let's get out the particulars out of the way. Hashtag sports in association with DeanBlundell.com. Sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes. If you go to the description of this video, you will find his brochure, the top 1% realtor in all of Arizona. You can find us on all of our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all of our episodes will be on iTunes and Spotify as well. Patreon link is in the description as well. $7.16 a month gets you in with the hashtag crew. Like I said, the Buffalo Bills have lost their... I'm getting on this side, Paul. I'm getting on this side. Have lost their, star safety, Micah Hyde, for the season. And now it seems that Jordan Poyer will be out. Apparently my article was one day too early on DeanBlundell.com, Paul, talking about the four starters that the Buffalo Bills are going to have. Paul, I did a little bit of digging right before I get to your opening. 4 games. You know how we thought it was many more?
Yeah.
Poyer and Hyde have played 81 games for the Buffalo Bills. 2, Poyer was out. 2, Hyde was out.
Yeah.
There was always one since September 10th, 2017. There's always been at least Poyer or Hyde in the lineup.
Yeah, this is a big one, right? Because you talk about incumbent defenses, and the Bills have been able to keep the band together for a really long time. And this is the first time you're going to be without both of them. That's a high watermark of, durability in the NFL. To have a tandem together that long is not normal. It's just not normal in today's NFL anymore, man.
Which is why I think the Buffalo Bills and their secondary are very highly touted around the league, is because they were able to play together for so long. You talk about chemistry on the back end of that defense. We're going to talk about Jaquan Johnson, obviously Demir Hamlin. We're going to talk about Elam and Benford. Obviously, that's going to be the starting rotation to go out there, along with Teron Johnson in the slot. But we can't forget Sear Neal. Sear Neal is also on this team. They called up a couple guys.
Sear Neal.
I've got to mention Baby Hulk. He's played all over the place. The guy's an animal. Paul, I think I had mentioned to you when Hyde first got hurt at camp. We did an episode about Hyde being hurt. Obviously, you can't be hashtag sports unless you're always trending. So we always try to get these, breaking news and stuff like that. But we always want to wrap our head around it first.
Mm-hmm.
I talked about, they talked about Johnson coming in to play with Poyer. Poyer and Hyde play 2 different positions for this Buffalo Bills defense. Yeah. Poyer's the hammer, Hyde's the center fielder. We've talked about that. And I had mentioned to you on that episode, I said, listen, Johnson probably is more comfortable playing with Hamlin because they're always together, just like Hyde and Poyer are always together. They never miss time. Hamlin and Johnson for 4 years, Hamlin for 2, being in the meeting room with Poyer and Hyde, being in the, seeing how they produce on the field and the things that they go. On a scale from 1 to 10, Paul, what is your worry going into tomorrow's game against the Miami Dolphins?
This isn't the preseason anymore. You're not playing the Colts in preseason. And I guess that's kind of where maybe it's just comfort. Like you brought it up already. I haven't seen this Bills team without one of them on the field in 5 years at this point, right?
Yeah.
So there's definitely a comfort level. And I cut a TikTok on this and a YouTube short just kind of jokingly because, people are talking about Tua. Oh, Tua threw for 6 touchdowns and 400 and something yards. So the weird thing about that is Tua played 15 good minutes of football. That's it, right?
Kind of.
If Tua had been Tua, and kind of, even at that, if Tua had been Tua for 4 quarters of last week, even though you're without Hyde and Poyer, aren't you looking at this saying the Bills are going to drop 60 on him, so it doesn't matter, right? Go ahead. It doesn't matter who's in the secondary, right? But the Bills fan in me says I have to trust the process, right? Yeah. I have to trust the process. Paul says this is a big problem, and I'm very uncomfortable with this. And we've
man.
talked about being without Poyer or being without Hyde, but we've never talked about being without both of them at one time on
Yeah.
purpose. Like if you're Poyer, like you're in a contract year. I know they just gave you incentives, but we don't even know what they are. Like those incentives might not even be reasonable incentives that he could hit. So aren't you basically begging them to roll you out there in a wheelchair to get you on that field to prove that you deserve to be there? Like, aren't they holding? Isn't this a hold me back moment?
Yeah. It seems like, Paul, we've already relegated ourselves that it's for all the Bills channels that are out there, and there's some great ones out there. We're the yeah but guys. That's what we are. That's really what we are. You sit there and you say the player in Poyer, he should want to go out there, like you said, in a contract year and just totally go crazy and play out of his mind. The other part of it is it's like a marriage back there. I mean, if he goes out there and they drop a stinker and he's back there, he doesn't play well, people are going to point at Hyde, and he's going to have that lingering over his head the entire season. So it's, the businessman of Poyer is probably like, I'm going to sit out. But the player might be wanting to play to prove that he can do it, because these guys are very highly competitive athletes and all this other stuff. We both knew, even though this was an incumbent defense for as long as they kept them together, which was amazing. We knew that this day was going to come where you were going to have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer not in your lineup anymore.
Right.
The Band-Aid got ripped off pretty damn quick, though.
Yeah.
We weren't really expecting this. Like you said, this isn't the Colts. However, I went to that preseason game, and I know the Colts are not the Dolphins. I saw Hamlin, and I watched Hamlin and Johnson the entire game when they were in there.
Yeah, you have to, right? You take the opportunity to learn.
Because you can't see those on the broadcast all the time. You can't see those. The amount of communication that they had between each other and the way that they were rotating and disguising coverages, obviously, they're not at the level of Poyer and Hyde. But the way that this team, per your words, the way that this team cycles out safeties and secondary players, for them two guys, especially Johnson, to hang on for 4 seasons after being a 6th round pick. And then you got Hamlin coming in. He's in his, he's in his 2nd year. They have the communication down. You're talking about Frazier McDermott. These guys are the cornerback, defensive back whisperers. If anybody can get it done with a little bit less talent. I mean, let's not forget that weren't Hyde and Poyer 5th and 7th round picks, cast-offs from other teams.
Well, yeah, and Hyde came from Green Bay, where they tried to make him a slot corner, and that was a disaster. He was not good in the slot. It was bad. And then Poyer was in Cleveland, which, I mean, it was at the time one step below Buffalo. Like, Buffalo was not exactly a hot spot to be either. You got drafted by Cleveland. It was like, well, there was your career. Save that first contract money, homie. Don't spend that signing bonus.
I think he started with Philly, honestly, and then he went to Cleveland.
Yeah, either way, Buffalo got him off Philly or off Cleveland. But the roster's a little light here, right? Because the only actual safeties that you have on the roster are Damar Hamlin, who was from Pitt, so he played college ball with Dane Jackson. He was drafted the year after Jackson. Hyde, who's now on IR. Jaquan Johnson, who's been here now, this is 4th season, right, from Miami. And then Poyer from Oregon State. Those are the only safeties on the roster. And even if you peel back and look at the practice squad, it's only 2 corners. That's it, right? Yeah. So when you talk about Ciaran Neal, you're probably not too far off there, right?
No, he's played back there.
Right, but the only other guys that you have Jamarcus Ingram, who played at UB, and there's one other defensive back, Kyler McMichael from North Carolina. He's a Tar Heel. Both rookies, right? No listed NFL experience. So, yeah, I mean, Ciaran Neal could be a very big part of what you see moving into Sunday, because there's not many other options there right now.
Yeah, and we just got a comment from that guy Kev. He goes, who'd you rather keep, Poyer or Edmonds? Well, you know what? Here's the crazy.
That's a dangerous question right there.
But and then Chivas Gold comes and says make a trade. Here's the craziest part about this, Paul. say Hamlin and Johnson play well.
I know.
Poyer's out a couple games.
Yep.
You know where I'm going.
I know where you're going with this. Yeah, I know where you're going with this.
I don't think that Poyer at 32. I mean, at the beginning of the season, he found himself between a rock and a hard place. They just paid Von Miller. They're paying Dawson Knox. You extended Diggs. And then he sees over the horizon, he sees Tremaine Edmonds and Ed Oliver. And he's like, I got to get my money now. I really have to get my money now. And then they give him that incentive-laced contract. Like we said, we don't know what the incentives are. They really could be unreachable. You know, if you think you're done with Poyer at the end of this, I'm talking about the Bills organization. I'm not talking about as a fan. I'm talking about as a Bills organization. If you think you're done with Poyer, doesn't his name start creeping up at the trade deadline?
I mean, when do you see Super Bowl caliber teams? God, I can't believe I can say those words and actually mean it. So you know, but when do you see Super Bowl caliber teams shed players? Right? Like you don't normally see Super Bowl caliber teams shed players. At that point, you just eat the contract if you can, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know about that. You know, I don't know if Poyer would have any value to another team in that short a period of time.
Yeah.
I do think that Buffalo is going to probably have to add somebody at some point, but probably no point in adding anybody right now because you've got Neal, so you could probably make it through, right? Again, another guy who's been around for a really long time. Yeah. But let's back up and look at what this secondary looks like, right? Your starting secondary for Sunday is Christian Benford, a rookie out of Villanova, Kaiir Elam, a rookie out of Florida, Teron Johnson, who's from Weber State. Cam Lewis is on the active roster, again from UB. And Siren Neal from Jackson State is your only other corner, quote-unquote corner listed on the roster, right? So you're going to see one of those two guys from the practice squad elevated. You're going to have to, right? Because the Bills just aren't going to be deep enough at corner in order to play. So you're going to see Jamarcus Ingram from UB get elevated, or you're going to see the McMichael get elevated because that's going to be what happens. But here's the problem. When you have a player like Tremaine Edmonds and Ed Oliver that you have to pay, sometimes your secondary is going to look like this, right? And sometimes the back end of your secondary is going to look like DeMar Hamlin and Jaquan Johnson. Like you have to know where you can go to save a buck. And the truth of the matter is you've got a guy from Villanova, a guy from Weber State, a guy from Jackson State, and a player from Florida and another player from UB. You're not talking about, aside from Florida, these are not pristine NFL ready talent that comes out of these universities, right? And here's Buffalo constantly digging. It's worked out so far. So you got to trust it, but it makes you really question what your roster is going to look like, because at some point you got to decide whether you're going to pay Tremaine. And I don't imagine you can pay Tremaine with Hyde and Poyer on the team. I just don't see how you can do it. You already gave Tremaine Edmonds money to Von Miller. Like that's where that money went. You gave Tremaine Edmonds contract extension to Von Miller. That's what you did. What are you going to do now? You play a division opponent with two guys who have never played together on an NFL field when the lights are on in a regular season game ever.
Well, I like I said, I typed the article up and I put it on deanblundell.com of is this McDermott and Frazier's Bobby Fischer moment? Like, are they playing chess? Right. Because they knew that this day was going to come. So why not your most imminent threat that you have to the division right now, the Miami Dolphins? You put those four out there in week 3, not week 14, mind you, week 3. And you try to see how the kids are going to do. Right. And try to see if those kids are obviously you got to figure out whether or not you're going to pay Johnson at the end of the year, because his contract's going to be
contract year. Yeah,
he's in his contract year. It's funny too. There's 2 comments in the chat. Pack 6 says sign Mario to start. Daniel Garvey says, Mario, can you play safety? Can I just tell you?
You did. You did play safety.
I did. But the funniest part about this is that before I did my episode, obviously Paul and I have many kids in our house. I was telling them, I was like, listen, I'm going to put you guys to bed. I got to do a show tonight. One of the Bills players is out for the season. My 10-year-old looks at me and he goes, "So you playing?"
Good question.
Paul, I was crying laughing at how
Good
funny that
question,
was.
son.
Good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. But the only thing I can do is imitate quarterbacks at this point. That's pretty much all I can do. That doesn't really help the secondary very much. But the thing about it is, I think it's a brilliant play by McDermott. Before Poyer even announced that he wasn't even going to be playing, I would have wanted this 4 to start because I want to see it. I want to see it. I want to see the cornerback whisperers, Frazier, McDermott, how they do with these guys on the back end. And you have to realize, and Poyer needs to realize this as well. If he wants to get paid by the Buffalo Bills, he needs to realize that if Hamlin and Johnson are able to play well back there as a tandem, you can afford Tremaine then. Like you said, you can now afford Tremaine, and you could probably afford Oliver if you're not paying those 2 other horses in the back end. I love Hyde and I love Poyer. Don't get me wrong. Back your gear. I love Poyer and I love Hyde. However, they can't play together back there forever, guys. It's just not the way it happens in the NFL. And they drafted and invested draft picks in these guys for a reason. They thought that they can be the guys to eventually take over. It may be a little too early for Hamlin, but I don't think Johnson. And these are the 2 guys that have been together. We got to remember, too, things that we don't see. They've been in the room watching film with Poyer and Hyde for, Hamlin for a year, Johnson for 3 years now. They know what's expected of them on that back end. They know the kind of communication they're going to have. And it's not like they have rookies in front of them. Usually we say Poyer and Hyde are there because if you have rookies, they can help them out. Now they got a really solid defensive line that's missing a couple guys right now. You got Milano and Edmonds in there who know what they're doing. So it's not like you got to direct traffic with those guys.
Well, I think that's really interesting, right? Because this is now the time where I need to make sure that Edmonds can control communication across the line, right? Because admittedly, if I'm looking at Miami, right, this is not a team where you need to run 2 safeties deep all day. Right, because Tua is not going to be able to complete a pass over 25 yards. Right, so let's just be honest. Let's just be honest about that. So this is a team that tries to disrupt you and tries to have the speed of the wide receivers control the routes early. So you need to play close to them. You need to disrupt their routes early. You let Tua try and beat you deep, right? Because it's probably not going to happen. You're probably willing to risk that. So with that being said, the linebackers are actually probably more important in pass coverage than any of the previous 2 games. So the success that Tua has throwing the football is probably more dependent to me on the linebackers than it is on the safety tandem tomorrow anyway, right? Because that middle ground is where he's going to live. That inside 15, that's going to be where he lives. And Hyde and Poyer don't normally control that space, right? That inside 15. That's not what they control. So I'm super curious to see if that's where, Tremaine earns his extension, right? Because he's going to have to control an awful lot in order to be relevant in this game. It's finally time for him to step up. He's had a great safety net in Hyde, great safety net in Poyer, but it's, you want to lead this team, you want $100 million contract, you got to start taking over. And I could say Tremaine, with exception to last week, Tremaine has struggled to take over games.
It is amazing to me. Well, a lot of times we talked about it too. I mean, coming into the league, he, as an outside guy, he would have been a stud immediately. They want to put him in the middle. They want him to quarterback that defense.
Right.
And we understand that. He got there a year after Hyde and Poyer, so they were already there and established and everything they were doing. But it's amazing to me that what has transpired with the Hyde injury, with Poyer not going to be able to go, Dane Jackson's injury, there's so many off the field decisions that are now going to be determined by tomorrow's game that we didn't even expect at all, because he's always had that blanket of Hyde and Poyer behind him. Now you don't. What are you going to do now?
Well, and I mean,
now, stud, you know what I mean?
And the injury list is massive here, right? So limited participants on Friday's practice, just limited. Gabe Davis, limited. Dawson Knox, limited. Mitch Morris, limited. Ed Oliver, limited, declared out. Jordan Poyer, limited, likely out. Tim Settle, limited, listed as questionable. Like there's so much going on. And those are just the guys that are limited. There were other guys that were, listed as DNPs that are declared out. You're without Dane Jackson. You're without Micah Hyde. And the odd thing is, like with Dane Jackson specifically, they've been kind of coy about what the extent of that injury is. Buffalo seems really, really tentative to put guys on IR, right? Because you only get 8 return to IRs, and you've already got Trey on there. So Trey's already on PUP, but it's the return. You get 8 returns. He's going to that counts as one of them. So you don't get to bring guys on and off injured reserve. So, Marquez Stevenson is on the injured list right now too. Ike Butker is on that list. So there's 3 guys, like,
yeah.
What
and
do
that
you do?
changed this year, isn't that right, Paul? Isn't that new for this year?
Yeah, you're only allowed to bring 8 guys, 8 returns from those designations back. Buffalo's going to end up using 2 between Butker and White, and then like Micah Hyde's obviously out for the season, but you don't want to be putting on guys on IR in week 3, right? With the intention of bringing them back, because you're not even halfway through the season before they're eligible to come back, and you can only pull a guy on and off that list twice. And it's for 4 games at a time. So Buffalo's being real careful here, but it's a very likely possibility that you could see a bevy of practice squad guys active for the game, just simply because that inactive list may be primarily starters, because they just don't want to put guys on IR. It's a strategic move. I don't know what exactly they're thinking of accomplishing with it, but they just seem like they don't want to put guys on IR. They don't want the roster spots. They really must believe their practice squad is that deep and their roster is that deep to deal with it.
What a heck of a time for Joe Hayden to retire, huh?
Don't talk to me about that, all right?
I know you wanted him.
About that.
Paul, I made a passing comment. Oh my God. The way Benford is playing, and you got first round pick in Elam.
Yeah.
It's going to be kind of, the secondary is not like the defensive line for this team. And what I mean by that is they play 100% of the snaps.
Right.
Milano and Tremaine Edmonds, they play 100%. The defensive line is really the only one that cycles out.
Mm-hmm.
So if they, we talk about if they stay healthy. I had mentioned on that Hyde episode that we cut about a month ago, we talk about cornerbacks moving to safety because of the intelligence that they've gathered over the years. Maybe their feet aren't as fast, but they've gained a few, things upstairs that they're able to understand the game and stuff like that. If Hamlin, let's say Poyer's out for an extended period, or let's say he's not out for an extended period. Let's say he's out for like 3 games. He doesn't play for 3 games. Johnson and Hamlin happen to struggle. What is stopping the Buffalo Bills for going with Benford and Elam at the corners and putting Poyer back there with Trey White to play center field?
Oh God, I got to talk you off the ledge on this one again. Listen,
I'm just putting it out there into the verse, because it's not out of the realm of possibility. I'm not saying that White's there yet. I'm just saying that as for a Band-Aid for this season with Hyde out, why not? Well, because you can drop them down to cover on the slot guys if you wanted to.
Well, easily. We are getting closer and closer to White returning, right? And yes. Man, okay, so we joked all the time about Leotis McKelvin would be the best safety this league has ever seen, because Leotis McKelvin had absolutely no idea where the ball was when he was playing corner.
Ever.
Just had no earthly idea where it was.
He made it through 7 regime, didn't he?
I know, right? And I'm solely convinced it was because he was like the swamp guy in Waterboy, where nobody really knew what he was saying. So, but here's the thing. You put Leotis McKelvin at safety and he gets to see what's going on. Leotis McKelvin could have been a dangerous safety, but it never really happened for him. You see aging players move to safety, and I get why you think that. I do not think that is something that White would do, but there's players that you could go out and snatch that are still available, that are free agents. You know,
yeah. There's a bunch of guys
do
that
I think it's just it was too short a turnaround time for Buffalo to be able to address it, right? I think they really thought that Poyer was probably going to be ready. They had to wait on Hyde because look at the roster spots that got vacated, right? They didn't sign corners or safeties. They signed they filled the roster spots with a defensive lineman. You know, and an offensive lineman. That's what they did. They filled them with line players. It's like, dude, you just lost a skill player in the secondary, and they refilled that roster spot with a line player. So they must know something we don't. I don't know what that is.
You know, we talked about it last year when the Buffalo Bills, and now they didn't have the defensive front that they have this year. One where they can generate pressure with 4. Which definitely takes a lot of pressure off of your secondary. You could put 7 in coverage, and then you can do whatever the hell you want. Obviously, you have some games coming up with some quarterbacks that are very, very savvy. When Trey White went out last year, we had a discussion on the show. We were talking about, listen, maybe this team will go back more to the basics because Trey gives you the freedom to do a bunch of different things and still be okay. He could just lock up a guy, and then you'd still be okay with your other 10. You could play around and do a bunch of things. With Trey going out, Dane Jackson coming in, you had to kind of be a little bit more fundamentally sound in what you were doing in your techniques and stuff like that. But you had Hyde and Poyer back there. Now it's almost like it's flipped. Now, do you think the Buffalo Bills go more basic and fundamental than they have in the past with Hamlin and Johnson back there? Or do you think that these two kids, I'm saying kids, obviously they're like 26 and 20, whatever. Do you think that they're ready to shoulder the responsibility of what 2 All-Pro safeties have done over the past 4 years?
This is a tough game to be able to judge that, Mar, right? Because Miami's not going to press the ball into their territory most of the time, right? They're going to keep everything within the first 10 yards on the line of scrimmage. Like Tua Tagovailoa threw for 400 plus yards, and there's a stat out there called intended air yards, right? And that's how many yards he tried to throw the football. It includes incompletions, right? So of 50 pass attempts, he had 50 less intended air yards than Josh Allen, who didn't even finish the third quarter, and threw 12 less passes. Lamar Jackson had 21 less pass attempts and only 14 less intended air yards. Like, they don't move the ball down the field.
So, okay.
Unless it's yards after catch.
So this is why you're saying that Milano and Edmonds are the 2 that we should be focusing on for this game as far as Mounty. Hamlin and Johnson don't have much pressure on them, but Milano and Edmonds will have all the pressure on them.
Right. And it may be why Buffalo didn't react by trying to sign a secondary guy, because they look at it and say, listen, we can survive this game just as long as Poyer's just out this week. We can survive it. And truthfully speaking, Hyde was the one that was the tough one to lose. You lose Poyer, Landon Collins is just sitting there waiting for somebody to sign him. So if you need somebody that's out for blood, then go ahead and sign Landon Collins when Jordan Poyer gets hurt. And if Poyer is going to be out in, longer, Landon Collins fills that hybrid safety linebacker role for you really well, but you kind of already have Ciaran Neal there, right?
Yeah.
As like an emergency.
Your torpedo, yeah.
Right, in an emergency situation. So, like, is this worst case scenario for Buffalo? No, because you've been preparing for this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And you know what?
Preparing for this.
Bean and McDermott we always talk about all the time on this channel that Bean and McDermott are always huge on insurance policies. Right. Well, this is the emergency's here. You got to break glass.
Yeah, so, this is the Jake. This is not the Jake Fromm emergency quarterback.
Oh God!
So I do want to point out, Caden asked a great question. Do we play more man or zone? I mean, we know that this team is primarily it's a zone concept, right? It has been. Against a team with, quick receivers, zone concepts can be really tough, because they offer a lot of gaps that those quick receivers find the gaps in the coverage, right? So we know, you and I know, that kids out of college, they played a lot of press man in college, right? Like, as you play a lot of press man in college, it's our athletes against your athletes. You one up and that's it. You play a lot of press man. With it as young as the secondary is, does Buffalo try and play man against these guys? Or do they stick to their identity and stick to a zone concept? I ask because playing man kind of pulls Johnson and Hamlin out of what their comfort zone would be for what they prepare for every week, right? Whereas playing zone makes the corners do something they're not exactly totally comfortable with yet, right? So
I don't.
what's the risk reward there? I think it's a good question.
I think you don't customarily cook steak on a regular basis. Then when you get some company over your house, you try to cook like something completely exotic. Mm-hmm. I think they're in the film room watching what Poyer and Hyde were doing all the time, and that's what they were learning. So I think you still go with the concepts and the defense that you have in front of you. Obviously, you got to play to your players' strengths, but there's McDermott and Frazier have a type. They talk about guys having types. They have a type. If you look at Hamlin and you look at Johnson, and then you kind of scroll back and turn back the clock and look at what Hyde and Poyer's like combine times were and how they play and how they're, all this other stuff, you're going to see some similarities. And there's probably a reason they drafted those guys. You know what I mean? In that respect. So I think Elam's one of the only guys you could probably have out there that could do a lot more man. But what do we always say? When you're playing man, you're likely blitzing. I don't think the Bills need to. I don't think they need to bring a guy out of coverage to blitz.
I think that's really interesting that you say that. Last week, that Miami offensive line is
putrid.
Bad. It's bad, right?
It is
so Tua got pressured on 15% of his snaps last week, and that Ravens defensive line is not good.
No,
and they got through that Miami offensive line. So I agree. You're probably likely only having to bring 4. And that was, I think, something that Buffalo struggled with last week was they couldn't get there with 4 like they got there with 4 against LA. They kind of struggled to get there with 4 last week.
I see Tua hanging on to the ball a little bit longer than Tannehill did. I really do.
Yeah. Why do you think that?
Decision-making. I think Tannehill's just a little bit more seasoned. I think in a lot of the route concepts that Tennessee tried to go into the game with, they tried to do like a lot of quick hitters just to try to keep people off of him. And they thought the running game was going to open up a bunch of things for him, and it didn't. I think Tua is not at that point. Like I know I bag on Tua all the time, and a lot of people really do. I always make jokes about him. Someone should tell him that he's right-handed, but he's still a young quarterback in the NFL, and he's still processing a lot of things. I mean, the guy went to Alabama. That's not like quarterback okay? And then you come into Miami, and then you're switching coaches the first year. Mm-hmm. So,
and sometimes you're starting, sometimes you're not. You get put in a game, you get pulled out.
Yeah.
It was an odd series of circumstances for Tua.
He hasn't been given the proper platform to develop.
Oh, time out. Be very careful with what you say, because I still remember the argument that lasted 3 freaking years of my life of EJ Manuel still hasn't started a full season worth of games at the NFL level. I do not want to go back down that road. Tua is terrible. Can we just put it? Tua is terrible. Josh Allen likes him. Josh Allen thinks Tua is a great guy. He's still going to get that ass whooping on Sunday.
Josh Allen's a great guy. That's why he says he likes him.
Josh Allen.
It's also awesome.
Good judge of character.
Yeah, it's awesome. #Nation and Bills Mafia. There's 113 of y'all in here, and we got 29 likes. Come on, man. If we're gonna hold up our end of the bargain,
you're so stingy.
Yeah, but so, I mean, I said, Paul.
Yeah,
I am on a scale from 1 to 10 as far as the worry that I have. Obviously, there's the Bills fan in me, and then there's the tape guy that breaks down and watches this and that. What I saw out of Hamlin and Johnson when I watched them, when obviously those preseason game against the Colts, the communication cannot be faked back there. That's why I watched the entire game, because we knew this was coming. You and I both know that the day where Hyde and Poyer don't play on this team anymore is coming. We didn't expect it right now, like I said at the onset. But I'd have to put my worry at a 3, even with Hill and Waddle. I think that they've been coached too well with Frazier McDermott back there. Like if they didn't have Frazier McDermott back there, coaching these kids up, maybe I would have some worry. Maybe if they were both rookies, I'd have some worry. But they've been in that building Johnson for 4 years, Hamlin for 1, watching everything and seeing everything, seeing how the correct way it's supposed to be played in this defense. Mm-hmm. You can't go wrong. You know what I mean? If they were behind two safeties that didn't know what they were doing, then I'd be worried. But they were behind two all-pro safeties.
You know, I'm willing to make concessions in the game, right? And the concession that I'm willing to make is I'm willing to let Miami try and beat us 4 yards at a time, right? I'm willing to accept that because you've got two corners who have never seen athletes like Waddle and Hill. Look at the colleges they went to. They didn't see them. And first off, thank you to Pierre Martinez. A.J. McCurran was from Alabama. You watch your mouth. Thank you very much, Mario. So
I was waiting for you to pick that one up.
Listen, I knew it was there. I let you make your point. Pierre had my back. Thank you for that.
Elam has. I will argue the fact.
Well,
Elam has.
Going to Florida, right? But unfortunately, right, you have to make concessions here. And I'm okay with 8, 10-play drives at 4 yards a clip. I'm okay with that, right? It's going to eat up clock, and they're going to still struggle to try and score against this team, right? They're going to get in the red zone. Everything's going to get smaller, and Miami's just not a very good red zone team. So I'm willing to accept that risk, right? Because I know that Buffalo can still drop a 50 burger on them, and that's that. Whether Gabe Davis is playing or not. Like, don't get me wrong, love to have Gabe, right? But I can't believe that we can look at the only other realistic playoff team inside the division and look at saying, well, our number 2 receiver, if he doesn't play, that's okay. Both of our starting safeties are out. I guess that's okay. Our first round pick defensive tackle, he's out. Tim Settle, our free agent signing to play next to him, he's probably not going to play either. Like, the laundry list of players that are out is crazy. And this is your best competition for a playoff position out of this division. And we're okay with that. Isn't that crazy? Like, I'm okay. Even with all the injuries, I have complete faith that they are going to whoop that Miami Dolphin ass. And I have no reason to believe that. It looks bad.
Is it because, here's a tweet for you, Paul. Is it because 1-7 is 7-1 against this team?
Well,
is it because you have Allen? Do you have rose covered Allen glasses on? Because until they can prove to stop that man, it's almost like you don't care what kind of defense they trot out there.
Right.
If this is I will have worry going into the following weeks if this is a 49-42 victory by the Bills. Like, come on, stop them. You know what I mean? Mario math. You stop it right now. We know most of y'all are probably listening to this or watching this from Florida, which, Paul, begs the question, how many of these people, do any of these people got jobs? I see so many people on Twitter that I know that are like in Miami right now. I'm like, don't you guys work? I'm like, how the hell are you flying all over the place?
Listen, if you're gonna go September football in Miami, I'm sure the weather is gorgeous, right? Except for the whole hurricane thing,
except for that,
death spiral tumbling towards your location. Aside from that
death spiral, Jesus Christ.
Listen, that's why I live in Buffalo, Mar. Right? There's no tornadoes. It's snow. You can shovel.
You just have 8 months of winter. That's all.
Yeah, I'll shovel. It's fine.
You don't stop it. You don't shovel.
Not well.
No. The shovel's thicker than you.
You've been to my house in the wintertime. You know I don't shovel all that well.
He pats it down with his tires, guys. He drives back and forth on his driveway until the snow gets patted down by his Prius.
That's it. See, when it's a Prius, you just go over the snow. You don't go through it. You just go over it. It's fine.
You a little light dusting, all that other good stuff. So like I said, Bills Mafia and Hashtag Nation, I wouldn't, this is a peek at the future. I mean, you're getting a peek at the Buffalo Bills future. Obviously they'll have a couple other drafts before, this and that, but they're going to get a great evaluation of Tremaine Edmonds. Can he be the guy in this defense, calling the shots, getting communication back to the safeties? You're going to wonder and answer a question if Jaquan Johnson earns a contract in the next few games that he's playing in place of, Hyde. You're going to see if Hamlin, another 6th-round pick, is a guy that could come in for Poyer and do the job that is assigned to him. You're also going to learn a lot about guys that already have contracts in Matt Milano and Teron Johnson. You're also going to see how this defensive front is able to rotate with injuries. Everyone this entire season, ever since the Buffalo Bills went 2-0, they're wondering, is there a team on this schedule that could beat the Bills? And apparently injuries is the only team that can beat the Buffalo Bills right now with that laundry list. Yeah. So we are going to be watching anxiously, just as all of you are tomorrow. We will be here. Joe's going to be doing the play-by-play. So make sure you tune into that. Paul and I will be here for the post game around 5-ish tomorrow. So we'll definitely give you our breakdown. And if hopefully some of those things that we talk about tonight will manifest. But, as we are as positive as we're trying to be, we do know that second team All-Pro Safety Micah Hyde is done for the season. Being placed on IR is a huge hit for the Buffalo Bills and this team. But you're going to have a lot of answers, a lot of questions answered tomorrow for how this team drafts, how they process things, how the coaching staff works with the young players and stuff like that. And you're going to have some questions answered as far as some guys you may want to have on this team next year and some guys that may not be on this team. So all in all, on the field and off the field, you got a bunch of stuff that you're going to have answers to tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to that as well.
Yeah.
Paul, absolutely. What else you got for the nation? What do you got for the nation tonight?
So I think it's really important when you start talking about expectations, right? You have to always, as a fan, check your own expectation, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm logging into one of the many ways to lose money in today's NFL, logging into an internet betting site and looking at the line of the game. Now, mind you, when you talk about major injuries, sometimes major injuries will skew point totals, okay? Right now, Buffalo is listed as a 4.5-point favorite. 4.5-point favorite in Miami. I am taking that all day long. The over is 52.5.
Are you taking that too?
I would take that too, right? Like, what tells you Buffalo's not going to score points? What about what we just talked about is going to impact the offense at all? Doesn't. Buffalo isn't winning games with their defense. They're winning games with their offense. And that's how most of the season's going to be. And when you look at these really high-powered offenses, you have to invest in where you score points, and you score points through your offense. You don't score points through your defense often, right? Yeah. And that's why I look at all these injuries that are mostly on the defensive side. And really the one that worries me most out of all the injuries that we talked about is the Mitch Morris injury, right? Yeah. Like, I'm most concerned about Morris. I know that sounds really crazy, but it's true. I'm most concerned about Morris because I want my starting center to be healthy. I need him to be healthy. I need him to protect Josh. I need him to get the football safely. I need to trust that battery there. And you're going to win this game by scoring 45 points. Sunday is 1st to 45, right? If you don't think Buffalo's going to be able to stop Miami offensively, right? Fine. Offense to offense, Buffalo's still going to absolutely roll them.
You know what, though? And I think we should prepare #Nation and the Bills Mafia for the people that are against the Bills and naysayers.
Right.
They're going to say, well, you played a team that had 7 bad quarters and 1 good quarter of football. They're gonna downplay that the Miami Dolphins were a mirage for 1 quarter, and that was it. So if they blow them out tomorrow, if the Buffalo Bills are able to blow them out tomorrow, make them one-dimensional, even though Hill and Waddle are a problem, and don't forget about Gesicki in there. I mean, that guy can. Those other 2 barn burners open everything up in the middle for him. So that's why we're talking about so much pressure being put on Edmonds and Milano. So, a lot of the naysayers will come out and say, yeah, they didn't beat a very good team. So just get ready for that if the Buffalo Bills happen to smack them.
Bold predictions.
Ooh, very bold. Look at that.
Buffalo Mafia News. Jaquan's getting 2 picks tomorrow. Woo. Listen, Boogie Basham has a turnover in every game this season so far.
How dare you?
Let's go, Boogie. Hey, listen, through week 1, he was leading the NFL in interceptions. I don't care. That is a fact. After their game, week 1, he was leading the NFL in interceptions. So, congratulations, Boogie. I can't take that away from you.
Oh my God. I can't wait to watch the game for tomorrow. Hashtag Nation and Bills Mafia. Thank you for joining us for our presentation of, talking about Micah Hyde being placed on the IR for the rest of the season. Obviously, all of our socials, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, you can find. Tonight's episode was sponsored by Mr. Rogers Homes in association with DeanBlundell.com. If it's a shootout, yeah, I'm taking the Bills all day. I agree with you, Daniel. So, guys, get some rest tonight, get some sleep, enjoy the game tomorrow, and
a 1 o'clock game. We're not
right?
used to that.
No.
Here in Buffalo with all these primetime games.
They're gonna flex it. Guys. They're gonna flex it. Paul better not hide for the roast tomorrow. Oh, he won't hide for the roast. He'll be there for the roast. You missed the last roast. I got torched. I got absolutely torched, Paul. There he goes. He'll be drinking his grape Fanta. Don't worry, guys. He'll have it.
I can't with you.
You. So y'all have a good night. Hashtag sports. We're out of here. Go Bills. Who are you, Josh Allen? Get out of here with this Go Bills.